I still remember the exact moment everything shifted between us. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind of ordinary day that blends into countless others. The kitchen smelled faintly of garlic and butter as I stirred a pot of pasta, the faint hum of the TV in the background. My husband, Daniel, sat at the dining table scrolling through his phone, his brow furrowed in concentration. We had been married for 6 years, and for a long time, I believed we were unshakable. But lately, something felt off. He had become more distant, more irritable, and our conversations had reduced to daily logistics, groceries, bills, what time we'd pick up our son from school. The warmth, the tenderness that once defined us, had begun to wither. That night, almost on impulse, I decided to test him. Not out of malice, but out of desperation. I wanted to see if he still cared, if beneath the hardened edges there was still a man who once held me as though I was his whole world. So I swallowed my fear, turned to him with trembling lips, and said quietly, "Daniel, I got fired today." For a heartbeat, silence filled the room. I waited for his reaction, hoping for concern, maybe a hug, or even just a simple, "Are you okay?" Instead, he sighed, tossed his phone on the table, and said words that cut deeper than any knife, "Finally. Maybe now you'll stop wasting your time pretending you're more than you are." The pasta spoon slipped from my hand, clattering against the counter. My chest tightened as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. I blinked, convinced I had misheard him. But when I turned, his expression wasn't one of regret or surprise, it was of cold irritation, like my supposed job loss was nothing more than a burden to him. "Daniel, what do you mean?" I managed to whisper. He leaned back in his chair, arms folded. "You've been bragging about that job for years, but what has it really brought us? Stress. Late nights. You're always too tired for me, too distracted for our son. Maybe now you'll focus on your real responsibilities instead of chasing after dreams that never amounted to anything." I stood frozen, each word landing like a hammer blow. For years I had worked tirelessly to balance everything, my job, the household, our child, and even him. I took pride in being able to contribute financially, in proving that I was more than just someone's wife or someone's mother. And now, in the moment I pretended to be at my lowest, the man I trusted most had not only failed to lift me but had crushed me under the weight of his disdain. The test was supposed to reassure me, but instead it revealed the truth I had been afraid to admit: Daniel no longer respected me. I forced a weak smile, blinking away tears before turning back to the stove. "I see," I whispered. He didn't notice the tremor in my voice, or maybe he didn't care. That night, after putting our son to bed, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My mind replayed his words over and over. "Stop pretending you're more than you are." Was that how he had always seen me? A pretender, a distraction, a failure. The next day, I couldn't focus at work. Yes, at work, because the truth was, I hadn't lost my job. I had only tested him. But his reaction poisoned everything. I no longer felt proud of my role, no longer felt safe in my marriage. I began to notice the small things I had ignored for months. How he rarely asked about my day. How he rolled his eyes when I shared accomplishments. How he seemed far more animated when talking to his friends than when speaking to me. The love that had once flowed freely between us had become a brittle, fragile shell. For weeks, I wrestled with what to do. Leave, stay, pretend everything was fine for the sake of our son. I tried talking to him, but each attempt ended with him dismissing my feelings or accusing me of being too sensitive. One evening, I sat at the dining table after our son had gone to sleep, my hands trembling as I pulled out my journal. I wrote down everything I felt, every wound, every disappointment, every shred of loneliness. When I was done, I read it back and realized something that terrified me. I had been clinging to a memory of who Daniel used to be, not who he was now. That's when I knew I had to make a choice. The next morning, I told him the truth. "Daniel, I didn't lose my job. I said that to see how you'd react. And your reply broke something in me. I don't know if I can keep living like this, unloved, unvalued, unseen." For the first time in months, he looked stunned. "You tested me," he snapped. "What kind of wife does that?" "One who feels invisible," I replied softly. "One who needed to know if her husband was still her partner, or just her roommate." We argued for hours. He accused me of betrayal, while I revealed all the ways I had felt abandoned long before that night. By the end, there were no winners, only silence. But within that silence, I found clarity. The weeks that followed were the hardest of my life. We tried counseling, but his walls were too high. Eventually, I made the painful decision to separate. Not out of hatred, but out of self-preservation. I wanted my son to grow up in a home where love was alive, not just performed. Leaving was terrifying. Starting over felt impossible. But with every small step, every morning I woke up without the weight of his judgment, every evening I cooked dinner in peace, I discovered strength I never knew I had. And slowly, I realized something profound. Losing Daniel wasn't the end of me. It was the beginning of me. Today, I tell this story not with bitterness, but with hope. Because sometimes the test we give others reveals not who they are, but who we've become in their shadow. And when their reply shatters us, it may just be the push we need to finally set ourselves free. So if you're listening to this and you've ever felt unseen, unheard, or unvalued, don't ignore that feeling. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from what diminishes you and walk toward the life you truly deserve.